On this week's video version of our podcast, Trail Cam Radio, we're sitting down with Johnny Stewart and talking all about access routes, getting creative to be 2 steps ahead of a mature buck. Johnny calls the Pennsylvania Big Woods his home, and he's a whitetail fanatic that has traveled all across the country for the love of chasing big bucks. Be sure to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And let's get into the interview.
Lights, camera,
follow the trail.
ready to shoot.
If you know where a deer's bedding and you know where he's eating, that deer should be dead.
Camera!
If you're passive on a deer, what you're doing is you're teaching them.
I've got 30 bucks in the Michigan record book. Everyone but one has had at least one previous wound on his body. Some had as many as 4.
Trail Cam Radio from the guys at Exodus.
All right, we are live with the Johnny Stewart once again. We are in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the Great American Outdoor Show, and as we go out and plan things, we want to have pertinent information for the time of year. And one thing that we were talking about prior to recording the first podcast we did this evening was about access. And it's definitely something that's probably overlooked by every hunter at some point in time, and they get too excited and they want to get out and start hunting right away. And from the conversations prior, I think you probably have a pretty interesting approach with a lot of different things on how to access stands properly. So we're going to talk all about that today.
Yeah, a lot of beginners, you're going to learn a lot about hunting an area, but how do you get into that area? Because that's your main, your main route is to get to your stand. Because usually if you're hunting like we do, like I do, a lot of public land, sometimes it's by the road. Sometimes, like this year, was close to the road. You just got to find, and that was like a once-in-a-lifetime thing. The wind was blowing southwest. It was blowing out of a clear cut right to the road. So we went in from the road straight, wind in our face. It was like man, we can hunt here all the time. It's not something you find. But as far as accessing different areas, whether it's a morning hunt, evening hunt, you got all kind of variables. Is it windy? Is it wet? Can I get in there? If it not, is it dry? How do I get in there and hunt? Do I not hunt? No, that ain't an option. You want to get in there and hunt, but so getting into that area, you need to be quiet. And if you're not quiet, you need to sound like a deer. So I wear wool clothes, especially my pants. So when the brush rubs against it, it's not, that's going to send a deer running, so your hunt's ruined. So yeah, you could try to be quiet, wear your wool, if you can sneak in, get to your spot. But if we talked about areas or times that you would hunt, maybe early in the morning, heavy frost, crunchy, you can't help but be noisy, so sound like a deer. There's times we talked about that I walked into my stand, I last 300 yards, 200 yards walking like a deer, heel toe, toe heel, 200 yards I'd walk, maybe grab your grunt call, especially during a rut. It's a good time. Usually the leaves are pretty thick and you got a frost. And one year I did. I was hunting Ohio public land. It was kind of a big bowl, start of maybe a tributary or a creek or whatever. And it was only from the ridge. The ridge wrapped around the bowl. It was same elevation all the way around a narrow ridge. It run around the top of this bowl, and it was only 150 yards down to the creek, the start of the creek. So I was at the very the back of the bowl, and I wanted to walk out left side, we'll say, and kind of drop down in that bowl 20 yards, 30 yards. There was a spot I liked hunting, but the wind was no wind, no birds, no cars, crunchy leaves. It was an evening hunt I was going to hunt. It was November 10th, and some of these bucks, they're still nocturnal until there might be only 2 or 3 days that they're kind of out of their mind. I mean, this was an old 5-6-year-old deer, I'd say, maybe 7, that November 10th, he was still damn near nocturnal. But anyways, I walked that ridge a good ways, but when I dropped over the hill into the bowl, I did the heel toe, had my grunt call, and I guarantee that deer was laying down in that bowl, and he could hear 360, just echoed. And I know he heard me. So I did get set up, and I think I comforted him when he heard me walking in and grunting, so I got set up and I shot that deer. Come walking right up the hill half hour before dark, but if I didn't walk that last 50, 80 yards or whatever it is, 20 yards, I don't know what I dropped over the hill from the ridge to get my stand. If I just hiked down there like a human, chances are he would have never came up because he got them radars on the side of his head. He could hear. And another instance that I used that, I was hunting Illinois one year, and it was kind of a creek bottom that went up to a bunch of fingers. That went up into, some ag fields. So I had found this creek bottom scraped up, and I hung a stand, and I wanted to go hunt in the morning, and it was a heavy frost, cold. And what I learned about these bucks during a rut, before dawn in the first hour or so, they're not moving. They're just resting up, and they're, especially on a cold frost, they're just using them ears. They're smart, they're efficient. They're just going to listen. Maybe they're going to look out. They're hearing what's going on, or maybe waiting the does to come back in. They're not going to get up and move midday is the best time. So I went walking in this creek bottom where it was scraped up, and I had a buck, probably 140-inch deer, bedded under my tree stand. And my last 100 yards, they approached my stand. I had my wool, very quiet, not making any synthetic noises with the brush. And that last 100 yards, I did heel toe, had my grunt call. I got to within 50 yards of that deer, and it was barely turning daylight. And that's another thing, before daylight, a lot of deer on public land really turn their minds off to humans being in the woods before daylight. The noises they hear, they pretty much never been spooked before daylight. It's kind of a human predator to a whitetail is kind of like daytime. So, if you're especially right before day or right around daylight, he may never been spooked by a human. So I got within 50 yards of him, and he kind of got up, and he, it helps that he was rutting, might be out of his mind a little bit, and he heard the noise of a deer walking. So when he ran 50 yards, he actually watched me get up in my tree 50 yards, like not good light, still kind of dark, and he walked downwind of me, did a big circle, and he didn't smell me, and he went out of sight. But if I didn't approach my stand that last 100 yards or whatever it was, I wouldn't have that encounter. And later that day, I ended up having an encounter with that deer. It didn't pan out, but think about everything you do and the approach, getting into your, sometimes you can't be totally quiet. So sound like a deer. It's not going to hurt. It might attract deer. So that is definitely things that might be overlooked. I got this spot, and you do all this. When you're scouting, you might be hiking around, find that spot, but how do I get there? How do I access it? Sometimes you could, like people talk about using waterways, to eliminate, their sound. You could sneak into a spot. Maybe you want to hunt it when it's windy, but there's a lot of variables in how to access your spot. But think outside the box. That's another thing I do. I don't do the typical. I do the atypical, what is not expected, if a deer's thinking about a hunter, this is where he's coming in. He's going to park there. He's going to walk in here. Okay, park here, walk down a road 300, or have someone drop you off. I've had that. Or I'd park down a road a couple 100 yards and come back and hunt. Because as soon as there's deer that I hunted, that behind them up in the forest or timber or whatever it is vast. And they're laid down by the road. There's a parking spot. And they just went, okay, they hear cars from up and down the road. That doesn't bother them. There's deer that also like the sound of a highway and that constant noise. They're not always moving, hearing a twig wind. They some deer like that highway. Or, they'll lay by a road, listen to cars go by all the time. But they also know if someone's going to come in from the road. So if he's there, you might have to have someone drop you off or park way down the road, and I did that one time in Ohio. There was a deer laying just right above the road. So I actually got up above him, but I went way down the road, 400 yards, and parked down there and shut my door real easy. You know what I mean? But there's also times, you want to maybe park your car, just let them know you're here, and then maybe go down the road. It depends on which situation, but your approach is definitely could make you or break you. This year when I was hunting in Iowa, it was windy for about 4 days, and on the 5th day the wind died down. It was January, and so I went to access my stand by a creek. I had to walk down this creek maybe 200 yards. The wind was at my back blowing downstream. And at the end of my 200 yards of that creek, I was going to hang a right and go up in a timber about 100 yards. But as I was going down the creek, wind was at my back, and a doe further downstream snorted. And I'm like, oh man. So I got out of the creek and I started up in a timber, and then a deer up in a timber snorted. Deep snort. I said, that's a buck. I said, okay, what do I do? It was about a half hour before daylight. I don't know if he might have heard me a little bit, but that's another thing, like in that area, it was before daylight, and I can guarantee you that buck in January has never been in Iowa, in that public land where I was hunting, has never seen a human being before daylight. He turned his brain off to that thinking. If it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon during hunting rifle season, I was going up there, he's on high alert, but that never happened. So anyways, the buck snorted up on a hill, and I know it was a snort of a buck, so I just stood there. So I stood there for a half hour. It was almost daylight. I said, well, I got to get to the stand. I let things calm down, but he stood there. I know he didn't leave. So I snuck up into the timber, and there was a couple, some briars that I went through. Luckily I had my wool on, and you could just hear that brushing against me. It didn't make that synthetic noise. The wind was calm. And actually, walking through the leaves, it was kind of soft. It wasn't a frost, so I wasn't really sounding like a deer. I was just kind of milling through the leaves, and in that case I didn't need to sound like a deer because it was a kind of a wetter leaf. I couldn't really get that sound. So I get to my tree, get up in a tree, and I'm not in my tree 1 minute. And that buck that snorted, that was in the timber, it was probably about 70 yards from me. He come walking toward me. He was looking. He come to me because of the two factors: is he never seen a human before daylight, and that noise told him that's another deer. He was scraping, and so that whole scenario, if I didn't think about my access and how to get to a spot and what to do when a situation comes up and how to deal with it, I could have ruined my hunt. But just constantly think and do what you got to do to make it work. But yeah, and I was successful. That deer came, another one came, and I got a deer on that day. But yeah, if I didn't think about my entrance and wear wool and just stop and let things calm down and stuff like that, I wouldn't have been successful. So there's a lot that goes into your access, and we even talked about, Chad and I talked about going hunting and getting like lackadaisical when you hunt, not just on access, but if you've got a hunting trip and it's rut and you want to be hunting every day, maybe you want to hunt 10 days, but you're really conscious about your scent and your access them first 3 or 4 days. You're getting up early, you're full of piss and vinegar, and then about day 6, maybe you sleep in a little bit, you don't get your scent-free shower, you just kind of go out and hunt, and that you're going to blow it. So it's there's a lot going into accessing that spot. You also want to be scent-free, and do whatever it takes, but you can't do it for that 10 days. I tell people, go hard for 4 days, hunt that spot. If you want to scout, find your spot, make sure it's scent free, make sure entrance is in. And if I'm up in a tree and the wind swirls, I'm like optimistic, but I'm also realistic. The wind swirls, there's a chance that a deer might have smelled you. I don't use no Zonix or nothing. I'm scent free, take a scent free shower, but you can't eliminate all scent. Sometimes when it's really cold and you're bundled up, I feel like your scent don't get out, but just in general, you're not going to eliminate all the scent and the wind swirls. And be realistic with yourself. Something might have smelled me, and that's why I'm really mobile when it comes to hunting, is because I'm going to go move here, because I might have, if I have a thought that I messed my spot up, a deer smelled it or smelled me or whatever, I don't take a chance. I move like a deer. I don't take a chance. But make sure you access your spot, and make sure you're thinking all the time. Wow, your hunt's got to be, and me and Chad talked about, you can't be like intense and do your scent-free shower. Get up at 4 a.m. Have your clothes scent-free, not sweat. Have your access, like think about all that. Sit there for 8 hours or 4 hours and think about what's going on. Always thinking. You can't go 5, 6, 8, 10 days straight and keep doing that too. Especially if your entrance is like a mile, half a mile in and out, and stuff like that. So we talked about you can't like have volume and intensity in the same. It can't be up. There's a yin and yang. One's going to give. Either going to be intense. You go hard for them 4 days, and then you back it down. You take a break, sleep in one day, wash your clothes, regroup, go check cameras. But that's all that's like access, and to me, that's like all involved in your hunt. Getting to your hunt is make sure you're preparing and doing everything right. But you can't like when I was younger, I would go out of state hunt. I had all hunting season to go, and I thought I was tough, and I was going to hunt 10, 12 days straight, and I got lackadaisical. I slept in a little bit. Man, that's a long hike back there in the dark and this and that, and so you might sleep in, or like all the things I talked about, and you're going to screw it. It's that one time you let up, you're not on your A game, boom, they got you. Then that spot's ruined, and you just got to move on. So don't ruin that spot. Just hunt it 3 or 4 times, but and I always take a scent-free shower. My washer and dryer is just for hunting gear. My brother was renting a house of mine and using my house, and I didn't care. He said, "What do you want?" I said, "I don't want money." I said, "Just do not put any fabric softener in that washer and dryer." I said, "You can stay there for free as long as you want, but don't mess my dryer and washer and dryer up." That's all I was worried about. I go, "Did you put in?" I think that's what my girlfriend, I think I smell fabric softener. You smell fabric softener? Is there fabric softener? And then he was so paranoid, he went and bought a new washer and dryer. It's like, don't use that one. Don't even think about it. You can use do whatever you want. Don't mess that up. But that's a big thing people don't think about. That's accessing your spot. There's a lot of guys that just hang their clothes outside or whatever. Sometimes it's good, but there's different scents that attach to your clothes. But, get a scent-free shower. And this is all, like I said, it's really tough to do mentally and physically, to do all this stuff. It's intense. You have to be on your A game to overcome that whitetail. You got to do everything right, because as soon as you slip up, you're in trouble. So, take a scent-free shower. I have my clothes in a bag, and as soon as I come out of the woods, they go back in a bag. And, I try to wear wool against my skin. It helps with scent, but every once in a while, if I even think that maybe I compromise my clothes, I'll wash them. Usually my outer layers, my outer shells pretty much stays scent free, but then I use them earth wafers. I put them, and when I was in Iowa this year, that's the thing, that had my clothes good soaked in that earth wafer in my bag, and that deer smelled that. I could tell the wind was right in the morning. It was just a light breeze. It was in my favor. That one that came in on me, he didn't, but he smelled that earth, and he was wanting to maybe smell some doe and heat or buck piss or something. He was like, he had his nose. He looked across, like, man, I like that earth smell, But he never smelled me, but. I have my clothes in a scent-free bag, just in a duffel bag, really. But, in particular, that's like, that's the stuff a lot of people don't talk to you. Talk about getting to the spot and being in the right spot. But all the preparations going into that, and to do all this stuff, over and over, you can't do it 10 days straight or whatever. It's only be a few days. But, scent-free shower, rubber boots, or boots that I wear, hiking shoes I wear. Do excavation, so I'm out in the dirt all day, so it's kind of like them boots are good that I wear when I go hunting, but I usually wear some type of scent lock hood a lot of times to control that scent. But so how's that sound?
Couple
Sounds good.
couple questions. We had talked, earlier, and I was showing you Onyx, you're showing me Onyx, and you had talked a bunch about reading, topo maps and using that for digital scouting, using Onyx for digital scouting. When it comes to access, are you looking at those maps? And I mean, obviously you've gone in and scouted those spots, but are you laying out, I guess, or marking specific access, either waypoints or access points or trails that you're taking into those spots on Onyx? Or are you just kind of like, this is, okay, I've scouted it. I know what it is in my mind. This is the route I'm taking.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. I'll have, like, I don't ever have bright eyes and ribbon and all that. I really don't want anybody to know where I'm hunting, but I'll know that waypoint, maybe a tree stand, and usually I use the terrain to get my, I know, that's what we talked about. I don't just study Onyx. If I'm hunting like a square mile, 2 square mile, I know that area in my mind. Like, even in the dark, I know it. Like, I guess people are different. You got to be different to get these whitetails. You can't be the norm. You got to be different and think outside the box, where people, they just find that, maybe that, I don't know how other people think, but they just find that spot and they need bright eyes to get you there. I'm like, I know the woods.
Yeah.
I know the woods that good. I don't need that, but I'll have, there's sometimes I'll kind of get off track, but I know, I feel it. It's instincts. I can get to that point. Whether, it's like a rugged terrain, it's maybe because, I had to go up this mountain, and I don't need, like, I can go a mile up in a rugged terrain, and I can get to that one spot. And actually, when I went to Ohio here in January, I didn't get down there till dark to my spot, and that's the best time to check cameras. I check them a lot of times at night. You don't really, because if you want to hunt there during the day and you want to check the cameras before maybe you want to check some cameras before you hunt, you don't want to kind of mess the area up. So sometimes I go in at night, and actually I went to grab a camera. It was probably a 20-minute walk, and all I had was my little headlamp, and it was raining and dark, and it was just marked on a hillside, real gradual hillside, couple ditches, and you can only see 15 feet. But on my Onyx, I didn't have, for some reason my map wasn't downloaded there, and so I went in blind, 20-minute walk, and just, are you comfortable in the woods at night to know your hunting area? Do you need Onyx? No, I know the woods that good, and it's not just that year I studied that spot, and it's years of studying that area, But yeah, I usually just have maybe my stand, a pin on my stand, and just kind of I know how to get to it. I don't need all the other stuff to get me there.
What's your opinion on? You mentioned a headlamp. I'm a guy that tries not to use any type of light when I'm accessing, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I will use Onyx every once in a while. I'll turn my phone and check that waypoint and see the proximity where I am. But in your opinion, there's guys that use green lights, red lights, no filters or screens over their lights. Do you think that affects?
I know. Yeah, I hear guys using different. Like, I went down South Carolina and hunted with my buddies, and they dropped me off, and I hiked in the woods with my light, and they're like, "Man, you just went in with that white light." I'm like, "Yeah." Aren't you afraid the deer gonna see you? I was like, I don't know. I'm making enough noise. I wasn't. And sometimes I'll take the headlamp off and I'll hold it in my hand and kind of like close my hand around the light to kind of just see down by your feet. You know what I mean? But
yeah, you're not broadcasting up on their eyes, and they're up. I mean, it's pointing down at the ground.
Yeah, and I don't know how, if a deer could see. I think the noise yourself would be more of a giveaway if you're walking sounding like a human than that light. I think if a deer saw just a light off in a distance, they don't think like humans do. They're like, okay, that's a light from a human. That's his headlamp. He's holding it between his hands. They don't, it's just like they don't comprehend that way. Like, it's like I think of a deer, like, they don't smell. It's like association. They don't associate that with a human. They see lights all the time. I don't say, okay, that's a human over there. But the only way he would know is a human is if he heard him. And yeah, it's all by association, like smells. Like, some people use, peanut butter attractant on different, it's just like, but if you were a deer and every time you smell peanut butter, someone shot at you, as soon as you smell peanut butter, you're going to run. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's like, it's all association. It might not even, and how a deer thinks is how, like I say, I kind of learned to be like a deer. I use my instincts and my gut, like you even said, of where to be and how to hunt. A big mature deer doesn't go through the woods and okay, that log looks good there. Okay, I got some brush behind me. He like tests the wind. Okay, everything's good, so I'm gonna lay here. No, it's just being in the woods for 5 years, like I say I am, and he learned it more detailed than I did. I just know like generalized because I'm not there every day of my life, But his instincts tell him that's good, and that's all he relies on, his instincts and association, and he associates humans with danger, and when he goes, and his nose, tells him, acorns are food, and that's good. It's just like, but yeah, they don't think like humans do, they just kind of, their gut, their instincts tell them how to live. And that's why an older deer, mature deer in a public land survives, is because he's able to do these things. His instincts tell him to do this to survive, because these other things didn't work. So for him to grow old and be the only few that are out there. But yeah, it's all association. It's like, so does this spook a deer? Does this bother a deer? If he saw, a light and heard a human and maybe, I don't know, yeah, it would maybe spook them, but I think just in general they don't sit and like figure it out. It's just their instincts and their association with it. So I don't really pay too much attention to it, A lot of times during a rut, I'll go in at daylight anyways, right at daylight, like I did this year. I just drove around, seeing where the hunters were, and I wait till that, and I'm like, and 9, 10, 11, 12, that's the time to shoot a deer. And it's cold in the morning. I ain't going out in that cold. I'm going to wait till it gets warm up, and I'm going to sneak in, and I don't need a light, I don't have to be there. I've done it a million. I've sat there because it's my association, how I relate to, just like a deer. My gut, my instincts of my years of hunting says I don't have to be there before daylight. A cold, frosty day, brutal cold, and it's going to warm up to, 35, 40. I don't need to be there. My instincts told me that, Here, I'm gonna get out there before daylight. Go ahead. I'm gonna wait. Why? And it's like a deer. He don't have an answer why. Just from years of being in the woods, he learned it. That's not what you need to do. But yeah, just years of being out there, and it's only recently people started asking me questions. I had to really think about why I do it and sit down and figure it out, because it was just all instincts on why I hunted an area, or and I just drop a pin on a waypoint, and then I just go back and I associate that waypoint. Oh, okay, that's good, But yeah.
One of the biggest things that I picked up from this conversation, I definitely agree with, is kind of catching them by surprise, or switching up your access too. In small parcel country, some of my, I guess, most successful hunts, whether I end up releasing an arrow or not, were when I mixed up my access to some degree. One particular thing that comes to mind is this late season. I would park on a little bit further north on the property and cut up a different trail, and this time I came in a completely different way, and had an extremely successful hunt. $5 coming out of their bedding area and piling right in there. And I think if a scenario where it's a farm that we've hunted forever and this is how everyone's always accessed it, and I was like,
yeah,
mix it up. And sure enough, it was, a very successful hunt. So I guess when people are looking at the big woods, but also like in small parcel country, and it's a parcel that you've probably been hunting for 15, 20 years and your family's always hunted it, mix it up.
Yeah, and the deer like a smaller parcel, like they associate, the cars start going at daylight, and they just know, they're like, they don't have a watch, and they're like, okay, the hunter's going to be coming in this time, I got to go. It's just like, everything, they just get up and go, just like my instincts of being in the woods hunting, just know to go here, do this. But, yeah, there's like cars start coming out. It's almost getting daylight, and like you said, maybe they hear a door slam, and it's like, okay, here's where the trouble's coming. The trouble's coming from this way. Mm-hmm. But if you come in the back door and they're over there, they're looking at the road like, hey, where's that guy? And you're behind them, and you pop them, So yeah, that's access is. But you got to think about all the angles. There's just so many variables when hunting them deer.
What's your kind of procedure as far as, you talked about being scent free, wearing wool clothes, rubber boots. What is your kind of procedure in scent control? Seems like you're a pretty big advocate on scent control. So what is your, I guess, process of maintaining that through the season? Because in the big woods, like,
Oh man,
It's hard to.
sometimes you're going to sweat.
100%.
You're going to sweat. You can't do
100%.
nothing about it. Yeah, I hunted a lot of big mountainous area in Ohio and West Virginia and even up north, and you're going to sweat. There ain't no way about it. So maybe you would. You can only hunt certain areas. You can't hunt everywhere. Maybe in the evening when the thermals come down, maybe just hunt the bottom of the hill. Or if there's a west wind and there's a ridge running north, like one place I hunted, there was a west wind and it blew right. The ridge was north-south, and it just hit that whole hill, and I would just I'd have to hunt the top. I get down over the hill too far, because I came from the leeward side, the opposite side, because at the bottom of the west, where the wind was coming out of was private land. I couldn't access it, so it was like up the mountain, and as much as I wanted to go and hunt down over that hill, I had to just stay near the top, because I knew as soon as I go down there, they just run north and south, and they'll catch you. Yeah, scent. You're gonna sweat. I mean, there's it's tough, and a lot of out in the Midwest, I had a lot of places the wind's pretty constant, but when you get into some rugged terrain, it's just bouncing everywhere, and it's tough. Sometimes I try not to sweat. I get into an area that I can access, and sometimes I got so many areas that I try to eliminate them rugged areas. Now that I'm older, I don't need to go in there. I got some areas that are closer to the road that I can get in and not sweat, But back in the day, boy, I'd take my Summit. I'm up and down 20 mountains, you know what I mean, for an evening hunt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd be sweating, but like in that rugged terrain, or sometimes get up on the ridge, so your wind's blowing across the top, or just cresting it, down over the one hill, so your wind's still going up top, and just be conscious about your downwind side, and but yeah, you're going to sweat. You're always going to leave scent. You can't help it. But definitely, I get a scent-free shower. My clothes are in a bag all the time, and when I get back from hunting, first thing I do, I get to my vehicles, I take them off, put them in a bag, change my clothes, and go about my business. And that's why I don't. Now that I'm older and I've been hunting a lot, I don't spend that many hours hunting. I spend more hours scouting. Like I told Clint, my new motto is scout more, hunt less, because that's what I do, and it seems to work.
Yeah.
Because you have to be so particular about your scent and your entrance and all these things when you're hunting that it's painstaking. It's it'll wear you out, especially if you're not seeing anything. So yeah, I scout, and then when time is right, time is a big thing. Be there at the right time. Know that a deer's going to be. I want to know that a deer's going to come through there at daylight. Know that he will. You believe the deer's going to come through there at daylight. So believe in your spot, but have evidence to back it up. Don't just be so big-headed that you're like, I'm in a good spot. Right. You might not be, right. But you also have the evidence. It's just a combination of things to make you hunt there. And so, yeah, it's like, just get it done. So,
well, the one thing that I guess one thing that we have in common. There's a lot of things we have in common, but the wearing wool. For me, going from synthetic clothing like base layers, whatnot, making that switch to wool and the antimicrobial features, like you can wear a lot of those pieces for a couple of days, maybe even longer, and it's not gonna. There's no bacteria that grows on it, and it's not gonna smell. So, I feel like if you are wearing those type of garments, you can get away with a little more versus some of those synthetic pieces where you wear a synthetic piece for a day and you have a mile walk in, and then by the time you get out, like you're done. Yeah.
So I always try to wear a mask too, like a scent, try to hold that scent in. And I try to shave my beard neck, your head, that holds scent, all that hair holds scent. Good thing I don't got a lot of hair on my head, so. You know what I mean? But, I mean, yeah.
Well, we know some individuals that take some of that stuff to the extreme. Like they'll shave their entire bodies, change their diets. They won't eat onions or garlic or.
See, I'm so, there's so many things people are worried, like worried about their gear, and like we talked earlier, I spend so much time in the woods and scouting. My clothes are in a bag, scent free, and I get a scent free shower. And like I talked today, I was like, sometimes I don't even have a rangefinder. Like, I just, my instincts tell me that's 20 yards. Not all the time, but like this year, I only use Tasco binoculars because they're cheap, and I knew I was going to lose them because I get up in the woods, and I'm scouting, I'm looking at everywhere. I take my hood off because I'm hot, and I set my binoculars down, and I get going because I'm like, I have like 8 million things going through my head. Where should I hunt? How's the wind? Where's sky? And I just keep going. It's like I'm so focused that I don't even shoot my bow a lot. It's like, because I'm so obsessed with scouting and learning. I do it right up till, and I'm not gear. I'm like you take an Indian, and you give him a goddamn horse with a long tail. He'll wind up a string out of that tail, and he'll give him a hunk of tree. He'll outshoot and kill any of us any day, and he has nothing. Yep. You know what I mean? He's in his bare feet, and you know what I mean?
Love that.
And we're going to be like, we got all these high-tech sights and rangefinders and all this crazy wool and all this. I'm almost embarrassed, and I get back to like, if you're good, you don't need all that stuff. Yep. You don't need all that stuff. Kind of clouds your vision. You got all this stuff. You're worried about the gear and you're worried about all this stuff. And I'm just like, I just grab my stand and bow, and sometimes I forget my harness because I'm just like, I just go and I'm out there. I'm like, that's all right. I just won't get high. You know what I mean? But if you're good, you don't need all this stuff. Like an Indian, did he have it? He had nothing, boy, and he'd take you to school all day long, right? But I learned that in general, like in life, in the business I run, my excavation business. I can get a lot more done with my experience. I don't need all the equipment that maybe another contractor need. I don't need all the manpower, and I'm successful because I don't need all that. The latest and greatest, because I can get it done with nothing. Be like that Indian. You go back to him, he's just like, he laugh at us. You're like, what? What's this hunk of ozonics? Like what's this thing? He'll look at your bow like he won't even know it was a bow, and he'll fling 4 arrows, and you'll be trying to look through your peep and line it up and stuff, But yeah, so all that stuff kind of gets in your way. If you're good, you don't need anything. I mean, I've shot deer. I had a white T-shirt on and blue jeans, up in a tree, but to come to think of it, the sky's kind of white, right? So I'm like, that worked, just watch the wind. But I got to hunt, I got to get out there. But yeah, I spent all my time scouting, learning, and ingraining the property that I'm hunting into my head like a deer would. And I would never know it like a deer, but I get as close as I can, And then people ask me where to go. Why would you go there? Just, man, the doe's bed there. This is where he travels. But I don't even always have an answer. It's just my instincts tell me. Like if you ask a buck, why do you lay there? And like I said, he don't know. He just, I don't know. He would say the same thing, yeah. But it just from years of doing it, he just knows that's right. So, but if you're a new hunter, you can learn from this. You might not have all that experience, but at least someone does. Like I said, when I was younger, magazines didn't help me because they were all geared toward not the areas I was hunting. So I kind of learned I was kind of self-taught and let the deer teach me.
So kind of to recap this episode's in a couple key points for anyone listening. Like, what would be like your access checklist? Like, what are the kind of key points for clean access to a successful hunt?
Accessing your stand?
Yes.
Make sure, ideally you don't want the deer to hear you. You want to be able to sneak in, which would be maybe a creek bed, and know where the deer are while you are going into your stand. Know where they're at. Because if you're, if the deer are in the field and you got to cross the field to get to that ain't going to work. Kind of know how they live, know what they're doing, so you can adjust accordingly. Like I know one year I hunted in Iowa, or places I hunted in Iowa, I would try to access, late season, I'd try to access a private, there was some private low land that was ag, and, everybody wants to, get near the cornfields or whatever to catch the deer coming out of the timber to feed there. And I was bumping deer on the way in, and then even when so the cornfield was to the north, and a creek bordered the corn and the timber, and it run, east and west, and I got up in a tree, and it was tough getting in there with so many deer. And then when the deer did come down in the evening before dark, because it was, late January, it was cold. They wanted to get out there and feed. They were like on high alert, like, because they were used to people hunting and waiting for them to come, come. Maybe they got shot at. So then I said I couldn't even access that area and hunt it. I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like off limits, or was it? I said no. So I went up in the timber before daylight, and I waited for them to come out of the cornfield like an hour before daylight. And they come by, so I was able to access it that way, know where the deer are while you're accessing there. You might have to change times that you're going in and hunt. So I went up in the timber and they walked by me like they were on drugs. They were just like high. There was like no deer looked up in a tree. No one looked for it. They were just like milling around. I'm like, huh, all right. But yeah, that's a big thing, is to know where the deer are when you're accessing, planning your route. Know where they're at. You can't just say that comes back to knowing what's going on in your area where you hunt. Say, I can't, and I was like, man, how am I going to get in there and hunt this? I really can't. I'll hunt it one at a time. I'm going to screw it up. Then it ain't going to come to where like, maybe I can access it. I'm going to go in before daylight and get there. And like even some bedding areas I've hunted of bucks, I get in way before daylight and wait them out. And so, yeah, sometimes accessing areas at night before daylight, the deer turn their brains off to humans in the woods. They're not really spooked by them. But, yeah, definitely know where the deer are when you're accessing that area. And so watch the wind, and hopefully, and there is some hope, involved in that. Hopefully the wind doesn't shift on you. Sometimes you just do your best, be optimistic, get to your stand, and sometimes you get to your stand and you're like, oh man, I made it. Because it was like dodging bullets, it was like landmines. It's like, man, I didn't. And sometimes I'm high risk. Like sometimes I might bump a deer. I'm taking that chance because I need to get to that spot. So sometimes it's risk involved. I'm pretty aggressive. So try to know where the deer are. But if there's a chance, take it. I do take chances. You might bumper one, but it might not be the deer you're after. But I do have, as far as access, I want to get to that spot one way or another. I take a chance. I risk getting there. But then that's not the only spot. That's not the holy grail. Like, that's the only spot I got. I'm going to hunt here. I can't get there. I'm going to go home. I can't hunt. No, I got another spot. I'm going to access that tonight. So I got spots all over that I can access that might be a little risky, but I got enough spots there that if I mess one up, but it is high risk because you got to get there. I want to be where the deer are, But yeah, know where they're at before daylight. If you're hunting morning or evening, know where they're at. Kind of play to win. If you have to sneak in like a deer, make that noise, sound like a deer walking, do that. Sometimes you might bump a deer, so well, tomorrow I'm going to try a new spot, or hang some cameras, go try that new spot. Did I really mess it up, or are they still here? So that's a big point that you brought up. What's important? I guess it's important to know where the animals are when you're trying to access that point. But I take chances. It's not like I can't spook a deer. I can't let them smell me. You'll never be able to get in the woods. It's going to happen,
right?
No matter what. So.
Right on. I think that's probably a good place to leave it for now. Hopefully this is helping people access their spots throughout the season a little bit better. And I think if people put a little more thought into them accessing their stand kind of to the extent that you're doing, I think they'll probably have more success at the end of the day. So
sounds good.
Once again, if someone wants to reach out, bounce some whitetail ideas off of you, where can they do that? Instagram,
the Johnny Stewart. Give me a shout. We'll talk whitetails. You got a question, I'll help you. Anybody wants to talk, we'll chop it up. Maybe I can help you out. Maybe you can help me out. Who knows?
Cool.
So.
Well, we really appreciate it once again, and we have to. I know this is airing in the fall, but we got to get ready for another day of trade show at the Great American Outdoor Show. So we appreciate it, and I guess that's it for now.